My name is David Dupuis. I am a peer support worker for the Mesa SUAP program with lived experience, meaning that I myself have suffered through mental health issues and addiction issues. And in my recovery, I've gathered some tools in order to help other people who are suffering from the same. My earlier life, actually, I had both parents and a brother, and early on in my life, I was sexually abused, and it was all swept under the table. That's the way it was done back then, and I was a very angry child. Grew up, nobody talking about it, nobody dealing with it, didn't get any help with it. I became a correctional officer when I graduated, took my anger into that field, started having a lot of mental health issues, anger, sadness, withdrawal. I didn't know I was sick, so in order to cope, I developed a huge cocaine addiction to Oxycontin, Percocet, pretty much everything you'd put in my possession I would use. My experience with law enforcement was it's a man's world, be a man. Asking for help or, sharing that you're having difficult times was the thing to do. When I went to management, they said the things like, we trained you to do that, or that's part of your job description. When serious incidents like murder would happen at the penitentiary, we never got debriefings. We were just, told to deal with it and go home. I also worked as a firefighter, and same kind of idea. After a terrible shift, you just come back to the station, hang up your gear, and go home. And then when you get home, you don't know how to talk about it to your spouse or kids because they would never understand the things you just went through. Even though I used cocaine and drugs on and off for 20 years, I would say the last 5 years of my addiction is where it spiraled. I went from being a weekend cowboy, a couple nights a week, to full-blown 7 days a week, all day long, going 2, 3, 4 days without sleeping. The last 3 or 4 years of my addiction, I had a $500-600 a day habit. Stopped working, couldn't work, became very paranoid. My marriage dissolved, lost all my friends, spent most of my time in my bedroom with the drapes shut, and at that point, my addiction, I was trying to kill myself with the addiction. My last year working at the penitentiary, I think I missed about 120 shifts. Just because I knew if I returned to work that I would probably kill myself there because of how much trauma I had been through there. And my last day of work, I finally dragged myself to Kingston Penitentiary after management complained. Management didn't ask me why I was missing time. They said, David, you're missing all this time, you're going to get fired. So I made myself go to work, and that's where I attempted suicide working on the midnight shift. All they had to do was ask what was wrong. 6 years ago, my last day of using, I posted on social media that I was at the end, and I had a good friend that I worked with at Kingston Penitentiary reach out and come and visit me right away. And he suffered the same. He suffered PTSD, and only then when I made it public, I had an outpouring of help from people that I had worked with. And I think that's the problem is we expect everyone to know that we're struggling. We expect everyone to see it, but we hide it well, especially when you work in that type of field. You hide those type of things because you wanna look like a man, or you want to be strong, and we're programmed that asking for help is weakness, right? So you never want to seem weak in front of another coworker, right? But once I did admit to the world that I was ready to die, and I couldn't do it on my own, surprisingly, I had a lot of strangers reach out, probably because they're people that weren't affected by my addiction and mental health. But I also had a small group of correctional officers I worked with come and meet with me, and that was 6 years ago, and we still meet a couple times a year, and we talk about the things that broke us and destroyed, and it's become very healing. I've lost quite a few friends that I've worked in law enforcement to addiction, to suicide. Now that I'm very open about it and use social media to talk about it, so many of them have reached out in private, still in private, because they don't want nobody to know. But I feel there's a huge correlation between that type of work and abuse and mental health issues and addiction. And it's all swept under the table because, they tell you that they train you for that. Who trains you to watch someone die? Who trains you to find somebody hanging? How does somebody train you to kill another human being? I think it needs to be the exact opposite. I think people in those lines of work need compassion. They need humility. Being humbled, like I said, I was a very angry human being. I was racist. I was homophobic. I hated the world, probably all because of what happened to me when I was a kid, and I was angry. And until life humbled me, I didn't know what compassion was. I didn't know what empathy was. I didn't know what being non-judgmental was. The truth is, people are dying from loneliness. People are dying from disconnection. People are dying from feeling there's not a place in this world for them. They feel like they don't belong. And that's where the addiction comes and the suicide comes. I had a fellow just celebrate his 2-year anniversary from a 20-year crack addiction. I bought him a cake out of my own money and 2 candles to represent 2 years. I showed up at his house. He saw the cake. He started crying. So we cut the cake. He invited his mom and grandma over. We had cake, and then he gives me a big hug, and he says, this is the nicest thing anyone's ever done for me. And all it was a stupid $20 cake from Metro with 2 candles. But it was the fact that I took the time to care. I think to some of these people that abstinence means success or validates that they've done the work they need to do. But, I know a lot of successful people that'll never be abstinent. I had a client tell me once I got them in detox and I got them in rehab, and she says to me, I'm going to be a somebody when I get out, Dave. I said, you're already a somebody. You don't need to do that to be a somebody, my dear. You're already a somebody, and you're valued, and I care about you, and you're loved. Where you're at right now is fine. If you get to that other place, that's fine too, but it doesn't label you, I don't put a label on these people. There's so many amazing people out there that we've lost and that won't get clean, and we can't give up on them. We just can't. It's not their fault. It's a disease. It's not that they don't want to. It's that they can't. And to mandate that we get them better, or that's just. I'm sorry. That's just bullshit. It's just. We don't tell somebody to get better with cancer. Hey, you didn't get better the 4th time. You tell your family you're dying. If we're going to do it for cancer, we're going to do it for addiction. You can't discriminate. I've worked with a lot of amazing people that, have no family, had no home, had no support systems, lived on the street, lived on shelters, and, I downplay me losing jobs. I downplay my suicide attempts. I downplay my 25-year marriage dissolving. And sometimes I don't understand why. I just feel that sometimes I feel responsible for my addiction, my trauma, and everything that happened to me. Whereas when I work with others who have suffered through it, I can quite easily see that none of it was their fault, that, addiction is a disease, mental health is a disease, and those things happen to those people. Those people didn't make it happen to them. We have mended the fences. I mean, our marriage is over, but we have managed to stay friends, and I think inside I do hold a lot of anger and resentment because addiction is a disease, and sometimes I'm like, would a marriage fall apart because I had cancer? Would marriage fall apart because I had heart disease? With addiction comes a lot of other monsters, financial stuff, anger, not being around. So have I come to terms with it? I understand it for what it is, and I understand why it has to be this way. And I'm quite honest with my ex-wife, and I tell her that I would never want to fix it because I can, at the end of the day, I can't trust that I don't ever return to that life. I don't like to use the word addict, but I know that there's a part of me inside that, is in remission like any other disease right now, but it could come back any day. I find that as peer support workers with lived experience, that we ourselves face stigma within our own organization because we don't have the piece of paper, the degree, the diploma that states that we were taught how to do our job. We know the value, what we bring to the table with our lived experience, and we don't hold any stigma towards them, but it doesn't get reciprocated. I think it's our job to try and change that. It's hard enough to change the stigma out there with the public and, with the government officials, let alone do it in the organizations that say they're here to help people in need. I try to make myself aware every day of where I was and where I've come from and where I am today. I see myself in these people every day, the good parts, the bad parts, and doing this type of work just reinforces that I'm doing the right things I need to do for myself. My whole goal is that I don't want anyone to sit in the darkness as long as I did. I don't want anybody out there to feel as alone as I did. When people ask me why I do what I do, I say, I get paid to love people. I get paid to sit with people, tell them I care about them, that I hear them, that I see them, that I validate them. I have the easiest job in the world. How easy is it to love someone? I've had more hugs that last forever. When somebody asks me, can I have a hug? And you can tell. They squeeze you so hard and they don't want to let you go. That hug probably means more than any report or medication or anything. Love is the best medication. Compassion and empathy is the best medicine.